Mia is now 25 years old, living in a messy apartment in the city, and working as an artist. Because her drawings still come to life and then melt away, she only uses a digital screen and an electronic pen to make her art. Digital drawings do not have magic. Her life is very safe, very clean, and very boring. But when her computer breaks right before a huge job, Mia is forced to buy real paint for the first time in years. She meets Julian, a sweet, normal guy opening a new coffee shop, who hires her to paint a giant wall. Soon, Mia has to hide flying purple fish and magic-growing vines, while also trying very hard not to fall in love with him. They say love is unpredictable, and today's story proves it. Welcome to Romance Crave Stories, where every episode is full of passion, secrets, and emotional twists. Let's begin. Being a 25-year-old artist in the big city was supposed to be a dream come true. For Mia, it was mostly just a lot of hiding. Mia sat at her small desk, drinking a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. She wore a baggy yellow sweater that was completely clean. Her hands were clean too. There were no ink smudges on her fingers, and no wax stains on her jeans. This was because Mia had a very strict rule. She only used a digital tablet to draw. When Mia was a little girl, her parents, Penny and Leo, found out she had a wild gift. Whatever Mia drew with real crayons, pens, or paint became real for a little while. If she drew an apple, you could eat it. If she drew a three-legged dog, it would run into the wall. The magic only faded when she forgot about it, leaving behind a messy puddle of ink or wax. As she grew up, the magic did not go away. It actually got stronger. When she was 10, she drew a life-sized horse in her notebook, and it ate her math homework before melting into a puddle of black ink. Her dad, Leo, thought it was the funniest thing in the world. Her mom, Penny, had to spend 3 hours cleaning the carpet. So when Mia turned 18 and moved out to become an artist, she bought a very expensive digital tablet. Magic needed something real to hold on to, like paper and wet ink. A computer screen was just lights and pixels. When she drew on her screen, the art stayed flat. It was perfectly safe. Mia looked at the flat, digital drawing of a coffee cup on her screen. She sighed. It was pretty, but it felt a little bit empty. She missed the smell of real paint. She missed getting her hands dirty. But she knew that if she used real paint, the coffee cup would pop off the canvas, spill hot liquid everywhere, and then melt into a giant mess. Safe was better. Suddenly, her digital tablet made a terrible, loud buzzing noise. The bright screen flashed pure green, then black. A tiny puff of gray smoke came out of the side of the machine. Mia froze. She poked the dark screen with her electronic pen. Nothing happened. No, 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 Mia whispered, pressing the power button over and over. Please not today. She had a massive drawing due by tomorrow morning for a very important job. If she did not finish it, she would not get paid, and she really needed to pay her rent. Mia looked around her clean, safe apartment. She had no paper. She had no real pens. She had nothing. If she wanted to finish her job, she had to go to the art supply store. She was going to have to use real, physical ink for the first time in 7 years. Chapter 1. Mia stared at her broken tablet for a full 10 minutes. She hoped it was just a bad joke, and the screen would suddenly light up again. It did not. The small puff of smoke had left a burnt smell in her tiny bedroom. She picked up her phone and called her mom. Hello, sweetie. Penny answered, her voice sounding happy and loud. In the background, Mia could hear her dad, Leo, laughing about something. Mom, it is an emergency, Mia said, rubbing her tired eyes. My screen died. It is completely broken. And I have to finish the cover art for that children's book by tomorrow. Penny gasped softly. Oh honey, that is awful. Can you buy a new one? They cost too much money, Mia said sadly. I have to buy real paper and real paint. I have to do it the old way. The magic way. The phone line went quiet for a second. Then Leo's deep voice came on the phone. Mia, it is your dad. Listen to me. You are 25. You are smart. If you draw something and it comes alive, just put it in the bathtub until it fades away. You can handle this. Mia smiled a little bit. Her dad always made things sound so simple. Thanks, Dad. I am just scared. The last time I used real paint, I made a flock of green ducks in my high school locker. And they were very cute ducks. Penny yelled from the background. Just buy very cheap watercolor paint, Leo advised. It washes away easily if things get too crazy. Call us if you make a giant dinosaur. I will fly out there and wrestle it for you. Mia hung up the phone feeling a tiny bit braver. She put on her shoes, grabbed her coat, and walked out of her apartment. The city streets were busy and loud. She walked 3 blocks to the small art supply shop on the corner. When she walked inside, the smell of paper, wood, and fresh oil paint hit her nose. It was a wonderful smell. It made her fingers itch to create something beautiful. She grabbed a small basket and walked down the aisles, looking for thick paper and the cheapest, weakest paint she could find. She picked up a set of blue and yellow watercolor paints. As she turned the corner to go to the front register, she bumped right into a very tall wall. Except it was not a wall. It was a person. "Oh wow, I am so sorry," a warm voice said. Mia stepped back, dropping her paint box on the floor. Standing in front of her was a man wearing a messy green apron and a pair of round glasses. He had dark, curly hair and a very kind smile. He bent down quickly to pick up her paint box, and Mia felt her face get very hot. Chapter 2. The man handed the paint box back to Mia. His fingers brushed against hers, and he smiled even wider. "I really need to watch where I am going," he said with a soft laugh. "I am Julian. I was just buying some chalk for my new shop down the street." "I am Mia," she said, looking down at her shoes because she felt very shy. "It was my fault. I was staring at the paints." Julian looked at the cheap watercolor set in her hand. "Are you an artist?" "I only ask because those are the paints kids use in school. If you want the good stuff, it is on the back wall." Mia quickly hid the paints behind her back. "Oh no. I like these. They are very safe." Julian raised an eyebrow, looking a little bit confused, but he kept smiling. "Well, if you are an artist, I actually need some help. I am opening a coffee shop and bookstore on the next block. It is called the Cozy Bean. I have a huge blank wall inside, and I really want a mural painted on it." Mia's heart did a flip. A mural? Painting on a giant wall with real, permanent paint? That was the worst idea in the world. Her magic would turn the whole coffee shop into a wild jungle. "I am very busy," Mia lied, shaking her head. "I don't think I can." Julian looked sad for a second. "That is okay. It was nice to meet you, Mia." He walked away to the cash register. Mia felt terrible. He seemed so nice, and his smile was really wonderful. She walked up to the counter to pay for her paints. Sitting on the counter was a small, "test your pens here" pad of paper and a dark blue marker. Without thinking, Mia picked up the marker. She was nervous, and drawing always calmed her down. She quickly drew a tiny, happy little frog on the test pad while the cashier scanned her items. She paid for her paints, said thank you, and turned to leave. Suddenly, she heard a wet plop sound. Mia froze. She slowly turned her head. Sitting on the glass counter, next to the test pad, was a very real, very shiny blue frog. It let out a loud ribbit and jumped. It did not jump onto the floor. It jumped directly onto Julian, who was walking out the door right behind her. The blue frog landed perfectly on top of Julian's curly dark hair. Julian stopped walking. He slowly reached a hand up to his head. Did something just land on me? Mia panicked. She dropped her bag, ran over to Julian, and tried to grab the magic frog. Chapter 3. Mia swiped her hand over Julian's head, but the blue frog was very fast. It hopped off his hair, bounced off his shoulder, and landed on the sidewalk outside the shop. What in the world is that? Julian asked, his eyes wide behind his glasses. Is that a blue frog? It is a very rare, very illegal pet. Mia yelled, making up the worst lie she could think of. It escaped from my pocket. I have to catch it. Mia ran out the door, and Julian ran right behind her. The blue frog was hopping down the busy city sidewalk. People were pointing and staring. The frog hopped over a puddle, bounced over a dropped newspaper, and then turned a corner. Mia ran as fast as she could. She saw the frog hop through the open door of a building. She ran inside, completely out of breath. Julian ran in right after her. Mia stopped and looked around. They were standing inside a large, empty room with nice wooden floors and big windows. The walls were painted a warm cream color, except for one massive wall that was completely blank. There were boxes of coffee cups stacked in the corner. Welcome to the Cozy Bean, Julian said, breathing hard. My coffee shop. The blue frog was sitting on top of an espresso machine, croaking happily. I am so sorry, Mia said, walking slowly toward the machine. I will catch him and leave. Julian watched her. He did not look angry. He actually looked very amused. You know, I have never seen a frog that exact shade of bright blue marker ink. It is a very cool color. Mia's stomach did a nervous flip. She reached out slowly, trying to grab the frog. But before her hand touched it, the frog let out one last croak. Mia suddenly realized she was too tired from running to keep thinking about the drawing. She let her mind relax. Right before Julian's eyes, the blue frog melted into a puddle of dark blue ink. It dripped down the side of the metal coffee machine like spilled paint. Julian walked closer and stared at the puddle. He looked at the blue ink, and then he looked at Mia. He did not run away, and he did not scream. Okay, Julian said slowly. Either I need to get my glasses checked, or your illegal pet just melted. Mia put her face in her hands. It is magic, she mumbled into her fingers. Whatever I draw becomes real. Then it melts. That is why I can't paint your wall. Julian was quiet for a long time. Mia waited for him to tell her she was crazy and ask her to leave. Instead, she heard a soft laugh. Mia, Julian said. That is the most amazing thing I have ever seen. You have to paint my wall now. Chapter 4. Mia lowered her hands and stared at Julian. Did you not just see the frog melt into a mess? If I paint a whole wall with permanent paint, the magic will be huge. The things I draw will jump off the wall and ruin your new store. Julian smiled, grabbing a rag to wipe the blue ink off his coffee machine. I don't mind a little mess. Besides, I open in exactly 1 week. I don't have time to find anyone else. I can pay you really well. Mia looked at the giant blank wall. It was huge. It was asking for color, for life, for art. She thought about her broken digital tablet at home. She really needed the money to buy a new one. And she needed to pay her rent. Plus, Julian was looking at her with such hopeful, kind eyes. If I do this, Mia said slowly, we have to set rules. I can only paint at night when no one is here. And you have to buy me a ton of dish soap and paper towels. Soap and water is the only way to wash the magic away fast if things get out of control. Deal, Julian said happily, holding out his hand. Mia shook his hand. His skin was warm and slightly rough from building shelves all week. A little spark of electricity shot up her arm, and she quickly pulled her hand back, blushing. That night, Mia brought her new watercolor paints back to the empty coffee shop. Julian had bought her a giant drop cloth, 3 big buckets, and a huge bottle of green dish soap, just like she asked. I will leave you to your magic, Julian said, standing by the front door. I live in the apartment right upstairs. If you need anything, or if a giant monster attacks, just yell. I will, Mia laughed. When Julian left, the shop was completely quiet. Mia walked up to the giant blank wall. She dipped her wide brush into a cup of water, then into a deep, rich green paint. She took a deep breath. She had not painted a real, physical line in 7 long years. She placed the brush against the wall and pulled it down, creating a long, smooth green line. It felt wonderful. It felt right. She quickly added a few leaves to the line, painting a long, creeping vine. She smiled, stepping back to look at her work. Suddenly, the wall made a soft creaking sound. The green painted leaves began to shake. The flat paint swelled and puffed up, turning into a real, physical plant. The vine popped right off the wall and started growing rapidly across the floor, reaching out like a long, green snake looking for sunlight. Here we go, Mia whispered, grabbing a bucket of soapy water. Chapter 5. The green vine was moving incredibly fast. It curled around the legs of a wooden chair, picking the chair up off the ground. It was thick, strong, and it smelled strongly of fresh rain and wet paint. Mia did not panic. She remembered what her dad always said. Treat the magic like a stubborn dog. Let go of the chair. Mia ordered, grabbing the thick, painted vine with both hands. The vine tugged back. Mia planted her feet and pulled hard. They played a giant game of tug-of-war in the middle of the empty coffee shop. The vine was surprisingly strong, but Mia was determined not to let it ruin Julian's new furniture. She let go with one hand, reached into her bucket, and splashed a huge handful of soapy water right onto the middle of the plant. The vine hissed. Where the soapy water touched it, the real leaves melted back into flat, wet green paint on the floor. The vine let go of the chair, dropping it with a loud clatter. Mia quickly wiped up the melted paint with a heavy paper towel, scrubbing the floor clean. She sighed, wiping sweat from her forehead. This was going to be a very long week. For the next 3 nights, Mia worked on the mural. She decided to paint a beautiful, magical forest. She painted tall, brown trees, bright pink flowers, and soft yellow fireflies. It was absolute chaos. Every time she finished a flower, it would pop off the wall and float around the room. She had to catch floating pink roses and put them in the sink. When she painted the fireflies, the tiny glowing bugs flew all over the ceiling, buzzing loudly. She had to chase them around with a broom until she forgot about them, and they melted into yellow drops on the floor. Despite the mess, Mia was having the best time of her life. She felt free. She loved the smell of the paint, and she loved seeing her art come alive, even if it was only for a few minutes. On the fourth night, Julian came downstairs late. He was carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He stopped in his tracks, staring at the wall. Mia had just finished painting a large, soft brown owl sitting on a branch. Before she could stop it, the owl blinked its big yellow eyes, ruffled its painted feathers, and flew off the wall. The owl landed right on Julian's shoulder. It hooted softly, rubbing its head against his cheek. Julian did not drop the hot chocolate. He smiled a huge, wonderful smile. He looked at Mia, his eyes shining with pure wonder. "Mia, this is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Mia's heart completely melted. She realized right then that she was in a lot of trouble. She was falling deeply in love with him. Chapter 6. Julian carefully walked over and handed Mia a mug of hot chocolate. The brown owl stayed on his shoulder for a few more minutes before it slowly faded, turning into a fine mist of brown paint dust that settled harmlessly on the floor. "Thank you," Mia said, taking the warm mug. Her hands were covered in green and pink paint. They sat down on the floor together, looking at the giant mural. It was half finished. The trees looked so real they seemed to sway, and the painted flowers glowed in the dim light. "How do you do it?" Julian asked softly. "Is it a trick? Are you an alien?" Mia laughed, taking a sip of the sweet drink. "No aliens. Just me. I was born with it. My mom says it is because I have a very loud heart. Whatever I feel goes right into my hands and makes things real." She told him all about her parents. She told him about the time she drew a giant green dinosaur in a grocery store when she was a toddler, and how her dad wrestled it outside. She told him about the 5-legged cats and the purple apples. Julian listened to every single word. He did not call her crazy. He just watched her with deep, caring eyes. "I always thought magic only happened in books," Julian said, looking down at his hot chocolate. He let out a long, heavy sigh. "I wish I had a little bit of magic right now." Mia tilted her head. "Why? What is wrong?" Julian rubbed the back of his neck. "Opening this coffee shop is my biggest dream. But it is so hard, Mia. The coffee machines break, the city permits take forever, and I am running out of money. I am scared that when I open the doors next week, no one will come. I am scared of failing." Mia felt a strong pull in her chest. She hated seeing him look so sad. She wanted to make him feel better. She put her mug down, picked up a clean brush, and dipped it into a pot of bright, warm yellow paint. She turned to a blank spot on the wall near the floor, and quickly painted a small, happy golden retriever puppy. She poured all of her warm, caring feelings into the brush. A second later, the puppy barked, wagged its painted tail, and jumped right off the wall. It ran over to Julian and pushed its soft, warm head under his hand. Julian gasped. He petted the golden dog, feeling its real fur. The sadness slowly left his eyes, replaced by a soft, happy glow. "He won't last forever," Mia whispered. "But he is here for right now. And Julian? Your shop is going to be amazing. I know it." Julian looked up at her. He leaned closer, right over the magic puppy. "You are amazing, Mia." Chapter 7. The next few days passed by in a wonderful, messy blur. Mia painted the wall every night, and Julian stayed downstairs to help her. They became a perfect team. When Mia painted a rushing blue river at the bottom of the mural, real water started to flow out of the wall and splash onto the floor. Julian was ready with old towels to soak it up before it ruined the wood. When she painted a tiny red squirrel that tried to steal a real packet of sugar from the counter, Julian gently caught it and laughed until his stomach hurt. Working with the magic instead of hiding from it made Mia feel alive. She was not a boring digital artist anymore. She was making real, beautiful things. But there was a big problem looming over them. "Julian," Mia said on the 6th night. They were sitting on the floor, eating pizza out of a box. The mural was almost completely finished. "We have to talk about what happens when the shop opens." We will sell coffee and people will look at your amazing art, Julian said, taking a bite of pizza. But the art won't stay, Mia said sadly. You know the rules. The things I paint come alive, and then when I stop focusing on them, they melt or turn to dust. By the time you open your doors on Saturday morning, this entire wall will just be a huge puddle of messy, gray paint on the floor. Julian stopped chewing. He looked up at the huge, colorful forest. It will all melt. Mia nodded, feeling a heavy lump in her throat. The magic does not last without me. To make it permanent, I would have to never paint it at all. I should have used a digital projector and printed wallpaper. I failed you. You won't have a mural for your grand opening. Julian put his pizza down. He slid closer to her on the floor and gently took both of her hands in his. His thumbs rubbed over the spots of dried blue and green paint on her knuckles. You did not fail me, Julian said firmly. This week has been the best week of my entire life. I don't care if the wall is blank on opening day. I care that we had this time together. I care about you, Mia. Mia's heart beat so fast she was sure he could hear it. She looked at his kind face, his messy curly hair, and his warm eyes. She wanted to kiss him so badly. But a dark thought crept into her mind. If she loved him, she would bring her chaotic magic into his normal, practical life forever. She remembered how tired her mom used to get cleaning up her magic messes. Julian was already stressed about his business. He did not need a magic girlfriend making things harder. Mia pulled her hands away quickly and stood up. I have to go home, she lied, grabbing her coat. I am really tired. She ran out of the shop before Julian could say another word, leaving him sitting alone on the floor. Chapter 8. Mia stayed in her apartment all day on Friday. She felt miserable. She had run away from the best guy she had ever met, because she was scared of herself. She stared at her broken digital tablet, wishing she could hide behind its safe, flat screen forever. At 7 o'clock at night, her phone rang. It was Julian. Mia took a deep breath and answered it. Hello. Mia, I need you, Julian said. His voice sounded rushed and a little bit panicked. I am in the shop. Something is happening to the wall. Mia dropped her phone, grabbed her keys, and ran out the door. She sprinted down the busy city blocks, pushing past people on the sidewalk. She reached the cozy bean and pushed the front doors open. Oh my goodness, Mia gasped. The coffee shop was an absolute disaster. Because Mia had run away feeling deeply sad and scared, her wild emotions had infected the mural. The magic was out of control. The painted trees were shaking violently, dropping hundreds of real, crunchy brown leaves all over the clean floors. The blue river was rushing out of the wall, soaking the bottom of the counter. Worst of all, the giant flock of bluebirds she had painted in the sky were completely alive. There were at least 50 bluebirds flying rapidly around the room, squawking loudly and knocking over stacks of paper coffee cups. Julian was standing in the middle of the room, holding a broom like a shield. He was covered in brown leaves, and a bluebird was sitting right on top of his round glasses. I tried to catch them. Julian yelled over the noise of the birds. But there are too many. It is my fault. Mia yelled back, running to the sink behind the counter. My magic reacts to my feelings. I was upset, so the painting got upset. She grabbed the giant green bottle of dish soap and the big bucket. She filled the bucket with warm water and squeezed half the bottle of soap into it, creating a mountain of thick, white bubbles. We have to wash the magic away, Mia shouted. We have to break the picture to stop the spell. She grabbed 2 large sponges, dunked them into the soapy water, and threw one to Julian. He caught it perfectly. Let's go, Julian yelled, grinning even though his shop was a total mess. He did not look angry at all. He looked brave. Mia ran to the wall. She hated to destroy her beautiful art, but she had to save Julian's shop. She pressed the wet, soapy sponge against the trunk of a moving tree and scrubbed hard. Chapter 9. The soapy water hit the magic tree. It hissed loudly, a sound like a hot pan hitting cold water. The thick, brown bark instantly melted, running down the wall in a stream of muddy watercolor paint. It is working, Julian shouted. He ran to the other side of the mural and started scrubbing the blue river. As soon as the soap touched the paint, the real water splashing onto the floor vanished, leaving only wet blue streaks on the plaster. Together, they scrubbed like crazy. They wiped away the glowing pink flowers, the shaking branches, and the tall green grass. Every time they erased a section of the wall, A few of the flying bluebirds in the room would pop like soap bubbles, turning into fine blue mist that vanished into the air. The birds at the top, Julian yelled, pointing toward the ceiling. Mia stood on her tiptoes, but she could not reach the top of the mural where the birds were painted. Julian ran over. Without hesitating, he grabbed Mia by the waist and lifted her easily into the air. Mia gasped, looking down at him. His strong hands held her steady. She reached up high with her soapy sponge and wiped right across the painted blue sky. Pop, pop, pop. The last remaining bluebirds in the coffee shop vanished into thin air. The loud squawking stopped. The shaking trees were gone. The wall was completely blank again, covered only in wet, soapy streaks of muddy colors. Julian slowly lowered Mia back to the floor, but he did not let go of her waist. They were both completely soaked. Mia's hair was wet and sticking to her face. Julian's glasses were covered in soap bubbles, and his green apron was ruined with brown and blue paint. The shop floor was a huge, wet mess of muddy water and soggy leaves. It was the worst disaster Mia had ever caused. She looked down at the ruined floor, waiting for Julian to finally get angry. She waited for him to yell at her and tell her to leave. Instead, Julian started to laugh. He laughed a deep, loud, genuine laugh that echoed in the empty shop. He reached up, took off his soapy glasses and wiped them on his wet shirt. "Well," Julian said, grinning at her. "That was definitely better than a boring Friday night." Mia looked at him in total shock. "Julian, your shop is a mess. The opening is tomorrow morning. The wall is totally blank." "I don't care about the wall, Mia," Julian said softly. He stepped closer, sliding his hands from her waist up to her cheeks. He gently wiped a smudge of blue paint off her nose. "I care about you. I don't want safe. I don't want boring. I want your loud, messy, magical heart. I want all of it." Chapter 10. Mia stared up at Julian, her heart soaring. She finally understood what her parents meant all those years ago. Love was not supposed to be perfectly clean and safely contained behind a flat screen. Love was supposed to be messy, loud, and real. She stood on her tiptoes, wrapped her wet arms around Julian's neck, and kissed him. Julian kissed her back immediately, pulling her tightly against him. It was the best kiss of Mia's life. It tasted like hot chocolate, rain, and a little bit of green dish soap. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling like idiots. "Okay," Mia said, looking around the wet, empty coffee shop. "We have a grand opening in exactly 10 hours. We need a plan. And a lot of mops." For the next 5 hours, they worked faster than they ever had. They mopped the floors until the wood shined. They wiped down the tables, dried the espresso machines, and threw away the soggy leaves. By 4 o'clock in the morning, the shop looked perfect. It smelled like fresh coffee beans and clean soap. But the giant wall was still completely, sadly blank. "I can't paint it," Mia said, sitting on a stool and resting her head on the counter. "Even if I paint it normally, my emotions are running too high. It will come alive and melt again by 10 o'clock. Julian poured them both a fresh cup of coffee. "What if you draw something small? Something you can focus on easily? The rest of the wall can be blank. People like modern minimalist art." Mia looked at the blank wall. She had an idea. It was a crazy idea, but she wanted to give Julian something beautiful for his big day. She grabbed a small ladder and a single pot of pure gold paint. She climbed up the ladder to the very top corner of the wall, right near the ceiling. She closed her eyes and thought about Julian. She thought about his kind smile, his strong hands, and the way he laughed when his shop was falling apart. She poured all her love and all her quiet, happy feelings into the brush. She painted a single, small, perfectly bright golden star. As soon as she finished, the star began to glow. It did not pop off the wall. It did not fly around the room. It just stayed right there in the corner, glowing with a soft, warm, magical light. "It is beautiful," Julian whispered from below. "It will stay as long as I think about you," Mia said, climbing down the ladder. "And I have a feeling I am going to be thinking about you a lot." Chapter 11. Saturday morning arrived with bright, clear sunshine. The Cozy Bean was officially open for business. Mia stood by the front door, feeling incredibly nervous. She was wearing a clean yellow dress, and she had managed to wash all the paint out of her hair. Julian was behind the counter, wearing a fresh apron, looking handsome and slightly terrified. At exactly 8 o'clock, Julian reached out and flipped the sign on the door from closed to open. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. Mia's stomach tied into knots. What if Julian was right? What if no one came? Then the small bell above the door chimed. A young woman with a laptop walked in. Then an older man looking for a newspaper. Then a group of 3 college students laughing together. By 9 o'clock, the shop was packed. The smell of fresh espresso and warm pastries filled the air. The sound of happy chatter bounced off the walls. Julian was working as fast as he could, steaming milk and pouring coffee, but he never stopped smiling. Every time he looked over at Mia, he winked. Mia walked around, wiping down empty tables and collecting dirty mugs. People seemed to love the clean, open feeling of the shop. Around noon, an older lady holding a cup of tea walked up to Mia. She pointed her finger at the giant blank wall. "Excuse me, dear," the lady said. "I love the coffee here, but that wall is terribly boring. Why doesn't the owner hang some nice pictures?" Mia smiled warmly. She pointed up toward the very top corner of the wall. The lady squinted. High up near the ceiling, the small golden star was shining softly, giving off a beautiful, warm glow. "Oh my," the lady whispered, looking amazed. "How did he do that? It looks like a real star. It is glowing." "He has a very special artist," Mia said proudly. Because Mia was standing right there, feeling full of love and happiness, the magic held perfectly. The star did not melt, and it did not fade. It just shone down on the busy coffee shop, filling the room with a tiny bit of real, secret magic. At the end of the day, when the sun went down and the last customer left, Julian locked the front door. He flipped the sign to closed and let out a giant happy sigh. "We sold out of everything," Julian said, leaning back against the wooden door. "Every single pastry. Almost all the coffee. It was a massive success." Mia ran to him and hugged him tight. "I told you it would be amazing." Chapter 12. Julian wrapped his arms around Mia, burying his face in her hair. They stood there in the quiet, smelling the leftover coffee and feeling totally exhausted, but incredibly happy. "I owe you a huge thank you," Julian said softly. "You kept me sane this week." And the star. Everyone loved the star. Mia looked up at the corner of the wall. In the dark shop, the golden star was glowing even brighter. "It is my favorite thing I have ever painted," Mia admitted. "Because it is calm. My whole life, my magic has been chaotic. It has been giant dinosaurs, 5-legged cats, and crazy bluebirds. But with you, the magic is peaceful. You make me feel safe, Julian. But not the boring, flat, digital kind of safe. The good kind of safe." Julian smiled, his eyes soft behind his glasses. He reached behind the counter and pulled out a large, flat, heavy box wrapped in brown paper. He handed it to Mia. "What is this?" Mia asked, feeling the weight of it. "Open it," Julian urged. Mia pulled the paper off. Inside the box was a brand new, top-of-the-line digital drawing tablet. It was exactly the one she had been saving up for. Mia gasped, looking at him in shock. "Julian, these are so expensive. You just spent all your opening day money on this." "You need it for your job," Julian said, shrugging his shoulders. "I know you need the screen to make your safe art for your clients. But..." He reached into his apron pocket and pulled out a small, nice box of real watercolor paints and a thick sketchbook. "I bought you these too." He handed the paints to her. "Use the screen to pay your rent. But use the real paints with me. I want the magic, Mia. I want to see the flying flowers and the running puppies. I promise I will always help you clean up the puddles when they melt." Tears filled Mia's eyes. No one, not even her wonderful parents, had ever understood her this perfectly. They loved her magic, but Julian wanted to share it with her. He wanted to hold the soapy sponge. She put the digital tablet down on a table. She opened the small sketchbook, dipped her finger directly into the blue watercolor paint, and wiped a huge streak of blue right across Julian's nose. Julian gasped, laughing loudly. "Hey, just practicing my messy art," Mia giggled, stepping back. Julian chased her around the counter, catching her easily. He pulled her close, completely ignoring the blue paint on his face, and kissed her deeply under the glowing magical star. Mia knew right then that she would never need to hide behind a screen again. Her life was going to be very colorful, very messy, and absolutely perfect. Epilogue. 3 years later, the backyard of Penny and Leo's house was loud and busy. They were hosting a big family summer barbecue. Leo was standing by the grill, wearing a nice shirt but holding a pair of cooking tongs, laughing loudly at a joke. Penny was setting the picnic table, her hair pulled back in a bright, colorful clip. The back door opened, and Mia walked out onto the patio, holding Julian's hand. Julian was carrying a giant bowl of potato salad. He wore his round glasses and a huge smile. He had grown very comfortable in the magical, chaotic world of Mia's family. The coffee shop king has arrived. Leo cheered, waving his tongs in the air. We brought food. Julian laughed, setting the bowl down on the table, and giving Penny a hug. The Cozy Bean was now the most popular coffee shop in the city. The giant wall was no longer blank. Over the last 3 years, Mia had painted a massive, beautiful forest on it using special, normal wall paint that did not have magic in it. But high up in the corner, painted in real watercolor, the golden star still glowed every single day. Mia sat down at the table and opened her purse. She pulled out her sketchbook and a few markers. Even though she was a famous digital illustrator now, she always kept real art supplies with her. She picked up a bright blue marker and started to quickly sketch on the paper. She drew 2 pointy ears, a wagging tail, and a big happy face. Woof! A bright blue, slightly translucent dog popped right off the paper and landed on the grass. It wagged its tail so hard its whole body shook. It was not a 3-legged dog like the one she drew when she was a toddler. Her art skills had gotten much better, but it was still perfectly, wonderfully blue. The magic dog barked happily and ran straight toward Julian, tackling his legs. Julian laughed, kneeling down on the grass to pet the blue dog. His hands got a little bit covered in blue ink, but he did not care at all. He rubbed the dog's ears, looking up at Mia with the same warm, loving eyes he had the very first day they met. Penny walked over and handed Mia a glass of lemonade, watching Julian play with the magic dog. He is a good one, Mia, Penny said softly, smiling at her daughter. He doesn't mind the mess at all. I know, Mia smiled, leaning her head on her mom's shoulder. He is the best thing I ever drew. That's where this love story ends for now. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more romantic twists. Tell me in the comments what will you have done. Until the next story, keep craving romance.